He had $40 billion in the bank, a tech empire that spanned the globe, and a penthouse view of the ocean that people would kill for. But Park Jun-ho couldn't buy the one thing he needed most, a tomorrow. 17 of the world's most elite doctors had stood at the foot of his bed in Busan, shaken their heads and walked away. They called it a medical mystery. They called it unexplainable organ failure. They told him to write his will. But they didn't count on the one person in the room nobody ever looked at, the woman changing the bedsheets. She wasn't a doctor, she was a housekeeper, and she was the only one who knew that the man in the bed wasn't sick, he was being murdered. Before we dive into this twisting tale of betrayal and redemption, please smash that like button and subscribe. It helps us bring you these incredible stories every single day. Now, let's go to the coastal city of Busan. The sprawling glass mansion on the cliffs of Marine City, Busan, was usually filled with the sound of waves crashing below. But for the last 2 months, it had been filled with the hushed whispers of nurses and the smell of antiseptic. Park Jun-ho, 32 years old and the CEO of Horizon Robotics, was fading. He used to be the face of South Korean innovation, tall, athletic, with a smile that charmed investors and a mind that terrified competitors. Now, he was a ghost. His skin was translucent, his hands shook too violently to hold a water glass, and he had lost 30 pounds in 6 weeks. The greatest medical minds had descended upon the estate. Dr. Lee from Seoul National University Hospital had run every blood test in existence, only to find a confusing array of elevated enzymes that pointed to nothing specific. Dr. Schmidt from Zurich had conducted a battery of neurological scans, his brow furrowed as he stared at the images of a perfectly healthy brain in a failing body. Dr. Gupta from Johns Hopkins had suggested a rare, unnamed autoimmune disorder, a diagnosis of exclusion that offered no treatment, only a slow march toward death. They had all come, they had all failed, and they had all left, leaving Jun-ho with nothing but a growing collection of pill bottles and a sense of profound hopelessness. Maya Williams, 29, adjusted her uniform and kept her head down as she entered the master suite. She was the night shift cleaner, invisible, silent, just the way the agency liked it. Maya had come to Korea from Chicago 2 years ago on a research grant that had fallen through, leaving her stranded with student loans and a broken heart. Cleaning rich people's houses wasn't part of the plan, but it paid the bills. She had learned to make herself small to become a part of the furniture. She dusted around the expensive medical equipment, mopped the marble floors, and changed the silk sheets, all while the drama of Jun-ho's life and death played out around her. She heard the hushed arguments between the doctors, the tearful pleas of Jun-ho's secretary, and the cold, calculating questions of his step-brother. Careful with the IV line, the night nurse snapped, not even looking up from her smartphone. She was a new agency hire, more interested in her social media feed than her page. Yes, ma'am, Maya whispered. She mopped the marble floor near the bed. She watched Jun-ho sleeping. His breathing was ragged, like drowning in air. Each breath was a battle, a shallow gasp that barely seemed to fill his lungs. Maya felt a familiar tightness in her chest. It wasn't pity, it was frustration. She knew that breathing pattern. She knew that specific gray tint to the skin, the way the veins stood out against his pale flesh. She had seen it before, not in a hospital, but in a lab. It was the look of a biological system under siege, a body fighting a war it didn't understand. The doctors saw disease, Maya saw a chemical reaction. Later that night, around 3:00 a.m., the mansion was silent save for the rhythmic beeping of the monitors. The nurse had gone downstairs for a coffee break, leaving the patient unmonitored, a dereliction of duty that was becoming all too common. Maya was dusting the bookshelf, carefully wiping down the spines of books Jun-ho would likely never read again, when a sound from the bed made her freeze. It was a gasp, wet and desperate. She turned to see Jun-ho's body arching off the mattress. His eyes were rolled back in his head and his limbs were thrashing in a violent, uncontrollable seizure. Maya dropped her duster. It clattered loudly on the floor, but she didn't care. She didn't run for help. There wasn't time. The nurse was floors away. Rush to the bed. Mr. Park, she said, her voice sharp and commanding, dropping the housekeeper persona instantly. She placed her hands on his shoulders, trying to keep him from injuring himself on the headboard. The seizing continued for an agonizing minute. When it finally stopped, he lay limp, his chest heaving. Maya leaned over him. She checked his pupils with the small penlight she carried for inspecting dark corners. They were pinpricks, constricting even in the dim light. She checked his pulse. It was erratic and thready, a hummingbird's heart in a human chest. He was conscious, but barely. He pointed weakly to his throat, his lips moving without sound. Can't breathe, he finally wheezed, the words barely a whisper. Maya's eyes darted to the oxygen tank in the corner. She grabbed the mask, turned the flow to the highest setting, and placed it over his nose and mouth. Then she did something no housekeeper should know how to do. She pressed 2 fingers firmly against a specific pressure point on his neck, a technique to stimulate the vagus nerve and slow his heart rate. With her other hand, she grabbed a pillow and elevated his legs, letting gravity help keep the blood flowing to his vital organs. Look at me, she commanded, her American accent thick but her tone soothing and unwavering. She locked eyes with him, her own brown eyes filled with a fierce determination. Breathe with me, in, out, in, out. You are not dying tonight, Jun-ho, not on my watch. It took 5 excruciating minutes for the crisis to pass. His breathing slowed, the color returned slightly to his lips, and his heart rate stabilized. When it did, Jun-ho collapsed back onto the pillows, drenched in sweat, his hair plastered to his forehead. He looked up at her, his vision still blurry. He didn't see a maid. He saw a woman with dark, braided hair and eyes that burned with an intelligence and a capability he hadn't seen in any of the expensive specialists who had stood over him. Who? He rasped, his voice raw. Who are you? Maya blinked, the adrenaline fading, reality crashing back in. She stepped back, smoothing her apron, her hands trembling slightly now that the danger was over. I'm the person who cleans your toilets, sir, she said, her voice returning to its quiet, deferential tone. Should call the nurse. No, Jun-ho said. He reached out a trembling hand and grabbed her wrist. His grip was weak, almost non-existent, but the desperation in it was palpable. The nurse was sleeping. You saved me. You knew exactly what to do. You're a doctor? Maya hesitated. She looked at the door, half expecting the nurse to burst in and fire her on the spot, but the hallway was silent. She looked back at Jun-ho, at the raw need in his eyes. Not exactly, Maya said quietly. I was a PhD candidate in toxicology at the University of Chicago before life happened. Jun-ho stared at her, trying to process this information through the fog in his brain. Toxicology, poisons, yes, and how they interact with the human body. The doctors, Jun-ho coughed, a dry, painful sound. They say it's an autoimmune disease or a rare genetic defect, something they can't name. Maya bit her lip. She shouldn't say it. It was professional suicide. If she was wrong, she'd be fired, deported, and blacklisted. If she was right, she was stepping into a world of danger she couldn't even imagine. But she looked at this young man, a man who should have had the world at his feet, dying by inches in a gilded cage. She thought of her sister and the silence that had killed her. They're wrong, Maya said, her voice barely above a whisper, but filling the room with its certainty. Autoimmune diseases don't cause pupil constriction timed with muscle spasms exactly 45 minutes after your evening meal. They don't cause this specific pattern of organ distress. Jun-ho's eyes widened. The fog seemed to clear for a moment. What are you saying? I'm saying, Mr. Park, that you aren't sick, you're being poisoned. The silence in the room was heavier than the ocean air outside. Poisoned. The word hung between them, a monstrous accusation that changed everything. That's impossible, Jun-ho whispered, though his eyes showed the seed of doubt had been planted. My life is controlled. My food is prepared by Chef Kim, who has been with my family since I was a boy. My water is imported and sealed. Who would? It's not the food, Maya said, her mind racing, connecting the dots she had been subconsciously gathering for weeks. She walked over to the bedside table, her movements precise and analytical. And it's not the water. Poison that causes these specific symptoms, a slow, cumulative shutting down of the nervous system, needs a delivery system that is consistent and hides the taste, something you take every single day without fail. She looked at the items on his table, a glass of half-drunk water, a bottle of standard pain pills, and a small, ornate wooden box with mother-of-pearl inlay. What is this? Maya asked, picking up the box. My herbal tonic, Jun-ho explained weakly. Traditional medicine, Haniak. It's very rare, very expensive. My stepbrother, Sang-woo, brings it to me every week from a renowned specialist in Seoul. It's supposed to boost my immune system to help me fight whatever this is. Maya opened the box. Inside, nestled in gold silk, were rows of small, dark, jelly-like spheres. They smelled earthy, a strong combination of ginseng, pine, and something fermented. It was a smell that would mask almost anything. But underneath the overpowering herbal scent, Maya's highly trained nose caught something else. A faint, metallic scent, almost like bitter almonds mixed with copper. It was the smell of death. May I? She asked, looking at him for permission. Jun-ho nodded slowly, a knot forming in his stomach. Maya took one of the spheres between her gloved fingers. It was squishy and slightly sticky. She didn't have a state-of-the-art lab. She didn't have a mass spectrometer or gas chromatography equipment. But she had a basic understanding of chemical reactions and a kitchen cleaning kit on her cart in the hallway. I need 10 minutes, she said. Don't take anything else until I come back. She took the sphere into the opulent master bathroom and locked the door. She placed the sphere in a small glass cup she found on the counter. Using the handle of a toothbrush, she crushed it into a paste. Then she reached for her cleaning supplies. She added a few drops of industrial-strength bleach, which she knew contains sodium hypochlorite, a chemical that reacts vigorously with certain heavy metals. Then she added a splash of white vinegar to acidify the solution. She held her breath and watched. The mixture bubbled and hissed. A normal herbal tonic would turn a muddy brown or maybe a dark green. This mixture did not. As the chemical reaction took hold, the liquid turned a bright, violent, unnatural neon green. Maya gasped, a hand flying to her mouth. The color was unmistakable, thallium, or a modern synthetic variant designed to be even harder to detect. It was known historically as the poisoner's poison. It was odorless, tasteless to the untrained tongue, and its symptoms mimicked a dozen natural illnesses: muscle weakness, numbness, gastrointestinal problems, and eventual organ failure. It was the perfect murder weapon. Walked back into the bedroom, her face pale, her hands shaking uncontrollably. She held the cup out for Jun-ho to see. "Stop taking them," she said, her voice trembling with the weight of her discovery. "Right now, don't ever touch them again. These aren't medicine, Jun-ho. This is what's killing you." Jun-ho stared at the glowing green liquid. The realization hit him like a physical blow. It wasn't a disease. It wasn't bad luck. It was a person. "Sang-woo," he whispered, his voice cracking. "He brings them to me himself. He sits with me while I take the first one of every new batch. He tells me I'm getting better." Tears welled in his eyes, not from fear of death, but from the agonizing pain of betrayal. "He's the only family I have left after my father died last year. We grew up together. He's been running the company, making all the decisions while I've been sick. I trusted him with my life." "And if you die?" Maya asked gently, needing him to see the full picture. "He inherits everything," Jun-ho said, the words tasting like ash. "The company, the estate, the pats, my father's legacy, all of it becomes his." He closed his eyes, the image of his smiling stepbrother handing him death in a pretty box burning into his mind. The betrayal hurt more than the poison ever could. When he opened his eyes again, the weakness was gone, replaced by a cold, hard fury. "What do I do?" he asked, looking at Maya. "If I confront him now, he'll deny it. He'll destroy the rest of the spheres. He has the doctors on his side, the board of directors. They all think I'm delirious. No one will believe the word of a housekeeper over the word of the acting CEO. We need proof," Maya said, her strategic mind taking over. "Undeniable proof, and we need you to get better, but we have to be smart. If you suddenly recover, he'll know the poison stopped working. He'll know someone is onto him. He might panic and try something drastic, a car accident. A fall down the stairs, a fire. So I have to pretend to be dying?" Jun-ho asked, understanding the dangerous game they were about to play. "Yes," Maya nodded. "You have to be the best actor in the world. You have to trust me. I can't make an antidote in a kitchen, but I can synthesize a neutralizing agent using activated charcoal and chelating compounds I can buy at a pharmacy. It will bind to the toxin in your gut before it can be absorbed. I'll switch out these poison spheres with safe ones that look identical. I can make them out of gelatin, molasses, and herbs from the pantry." Jun-ho studied her face, a black woman from Chicago wearing a maid's uniform plotting a complex counter-operation against a Korean billionaire heir. It was the most absurd, incredible thing he had ever heard. "Why?" Jun-ho asked, his voice filled with wonder. "Why help me? You're putting yourself in incredible danger. You could just walk away, go back to your life, and pretend you never saw anything." Maya smiled peacefully, a sad, faraway look in her eyes. "I had a little sister, Nia. She had a rare allergic reaction when she was 10. We took her to 3 different ERs. The doctors looked at our insurance, they looked at our skin color, and they assumed it was asthma or something she ate. They sent us home with an inhaler. She died in her sleep that night. I swore then that if I ever had the knowledge to save someone, I wouldn't stay silent. Not again, not for anyone." Jun-ho reached out and took her hand. It was the first time he had touched her with intention. "Okay, Maya, I trust you. You're my doctor now." For the next 3 weeks, a secret, high-stakes game played out in the mansion. By day, Maya slept, exhausted from her double life. By night, she was a chemist and a spy. She converted a corner of her small room in the servants' quarters into a makeshift lab. She created the fake medicine spheres, perfecting the smell and texture. She ground up charcoal pills and mixed them into a slurry that she brought to Jun-ho in water bottles. She cooked him nutrient-dense, high-calorie broths in secret, sneaking them into his room so he could regain his strength without the chef knowing he was eating more. Jun-ho played his part perfectly. He moaned in pain when the nurses were around, complaining of new, imaginary symptoms. He kept the lights dim and refused visitors, but inside his body was fighting back. The tremors stopped, the brain fog lifted, the color returned to his cheeks, which he hid under a layer of pale makeup Maya bought him. In those quiet, stolen hours of the night, they talked, not as master and servant, but as co-conspirators, as friends. They talked about chemistry, about the future of robotics, about Chicago blues and Busan seafood. Jun-ho fell in love with her mind first. He watched her explain complex molecular structures, her hands moving animatedly, her eyes lighting up with passion, and he realized he had never met a woman so brilliant, yet so completely overlooked by the world. He saw the fire in her, and it rekindled the fire in him. But the villain was watching too, waiting for his moment to strike the final blow. It was a rainy Tuesday when Park Sang-woo, the step-brother, arrived. The storm outside mirrored the gathering storm inside the mansion. Sang-woo was slick, wearing an Italian suit that cost more than Maya's childhood home. His hair was perfectly coiffed, his smile bright and empty. He carried a new, larger box of the medicine. Maya was in the hallway, polishing a large antique mirror, making herself as invisible as the glass itself. She watched his reflection as he approached the head nurse. "How is my poor brother today?" Sang-woo asked, his voice dripping with faux concern. "No change, sir," the nurse replied with a sigh. "He's very weak, he barely sleeps. Honestly, I don't think he'll last the week." Sang-woo's smile faltered for a fraction of a second, a micro-expression of cold satisfaction that vanished instantly. "Tragic, just tragic. I'll go see him. I brought him something to ease his passing." Maya's heart hammered against her ribs. She pulled out the burner phone she had bought for Jun-ho and sent a quick text. He's coming. He has a new batch. Be careful. In the bedroom, Jun-ho lay still, his eyes closed, his breathing shallow. Sang-woo entered softly and sat on the edge of the bed, his presence filling the room with a suffocating tension. Brother, Sang-woo sighed, reaching out to pat Jun-ho's hand. You look terrible. It breaks my heart to see you like this. Jun-ho opened his eyes, making them look glassy and unfocused. Sang-woo. He rasped, Is it time? Not yet, Jun-ho, not yet, Sang-woo said soothingly. But don't worry about anything. The board meeting is tomorrow. I've got it all handled. I'll make sure your legacy is safe. I'll take care of Horizon. I'll take care of everything. Thank you, Sang-woo, Jun-ho whispered, feigning gratitude. Did you bring the medicine? The pain is unbearable today. Of course. Sang-woo placed the ornate box on the bedside table. This is a special batch. The doctor said it's stronger. Make sure you take a double dose tonight. It will help you rest. He opened the box and took out 2 of the spheres. He held them out to Jun-ho, watching him with hawk-like intensity. Jun-ho took them with a trembling hand and placed them in his mouth, taking a sip of water. He swallowed, making a show of it. Sang-woo watched his throat work, a satisfied glint in his eyes. As Sang-woo left the room, he walked with a lighter step. He stopped by the kitchen on his way out, under the pretense of getting a glass of water. Maya was there, pretending to organize the pantry. Out of the corner of her eye, she saw him pull a small, empty glass vial from his pocket and drop it into the general trash can. He then washed his hands thoroughly before walking out to his waiting limousine. As soon as the taillights of the car disappeared in the rain, Maya rushed to the trash can. She fished the vial out, her hands gloved. It was empty, but there was a faint powdery residue inside. It wasn't the herbal smell of the spheres. It was something else. She brought it to her nose. Arsenic, pure, unadulterated arsenic. He was escalating. The thallium was too slow. He wanted Jun-ho dead tonight before the board meeting tomorrow, so there would be no doubt, no last-minute rally. The takeover would be absolute. She ran up the stairs to the bedroom, bursting in without knocking. Jun-ho was sitting up in bed, spitting the 2 fake spheres he had swallowed into a tissue. He's trying to finish it tonight, she told him, holding up the vial. He dropped this in the kitchen. It's arsenic. He told you to take a double dose of the new batch. If you had taken the real ones, you'd be dead by morning. Jun-ho looked at the vial, then at Maya. He wiped the fake sweat from his brow, his expression hardening. The time for acting was over. Then tonight we end it, Jun-ho said, his voice strong and clear. He stood up from the bed, stretching his limbs, the weakness gone. Get my suit, Maya, not the pajamas, my best suit. The confrontation. The next morning, the conference room on the top floor of the Horizon Robotics Tower in Seoul was packed. The board of directors, shareholders, and key executives were all present, a sea of grim faces in expensive suits. Sang-woo stood at the head of the long, polished table, looking solemn and commanding. A large screen behind him displayed a graph of the company's declining stock. It is with a heavy heart, Sang-woo began, his voice perfectly modulated for grieving authority, that I must officially announce the complete incapacitation of our CEO, my brother, Park Jun-ho. He has slipped into a deep coma from which the doctors say he will not wake. In light of this tragedy and for the sake of the company's future, I am stepping up to permanently assume the role of CEO, effective immediately. We must move forward. The double doors at the end of the room were thrown open with a force that made everyone jump. Jun-ho didn't just walk in, he strode in. He was wearing a perfectly tailored navy blue suit that emphasized his broad shoulders. He was clean-shaven, his hair styled, and he looked sharp, powerful, and very much alive. There was no trace of the dying man from yesterday. Behind him, looking terrified but determined, walked Maya. She was no longer in a uniform. She wore a simple but elegant black blazer and trousers Jun-ho had ordered for her. In her hand, she held a clear plastic evidence bag containing the wooden box of spheres and the small glass vial from the trash. A collective gasp rippled through the room. Sang-woo dropped his laser pointer. It clattered loudly on the floor in the sudden silence. He stared, his face draining of color as if he were seeing a ghost. Jun-ho, Sang-woo stammered, his voice squeaking. But the doctors said. Alive, Jun-ho finished for him, walking slowly and deliberately towards the head of the table. Disappointed, brother? No, of course not, it's a miracle. Sang-woo tried to recover, sweating profusely now, his eyes darting around the room for support that wasn't there. We should celebrate, someone call the doctors. Miracle, Jun-ho said, his voice cold as ice, stopping right in front of Sang-woo. Science. He gestured to Maya, who stepped forward and placed the evidence bag on the table for everyone to see. This is Maya Williams, Jun-ho announced to the stunned room. She's a toxicologist, and she is the woman who saved my life from the poison you've been feeding me for the past 3 months. This is absurd, Sang-woo screamed, finding his voice again. He pointed a shaking finger at Maya. She's a cleaner. A housekeeper, she's a nobody. You're hallucinating, Jun-ho. The sickness has gone to your brain. Security, remove this woman. Am I hallucinating, Sang-woo? Jun-ho said calmly. He signaled to the back of the room. 2 uniformed police officers and a detective stepped forward. We raided your office this morning. We found the rest of the thallium and arsenic in your safe. We found the purchase orders on the dark web on your encrypted laptop. We have your emails to the supplier. It's over. Sang-woo looked at the police, then at the board members, who were now looking at him with horror and disgust. He looked at Jun-ho, the brother he thought he had buried, and finally he looked at Maya, the invisible woman who had undone him. As the police stepped forward and handcuffed him, Sang-woo glared at Maya with pure, unadulterated hatred. "You," he spat, "you filthy little maid, you ruined everything. You should have just done your job and cleaned the floor." Maya lifted her chin, meeting his gaze without flinching. Her eyes were fierce and proud. "I did," she said calmly, her voice ringing through the silent room. "I cleaned up the trash. That's my job." Part 4, A New Life narrator. The scandal shook South Korea to its core. The Poisoned Prince was the headline on every newspaper and news channel for weeks. The story of the greedy stepbrother and the miraculous recovery of the CEO captivated the nation. But the real story, the one that captured the public's imagination, was the genius housekeeper who had outsmarted a killer. With Sang-woo awaiting trial in prison and the entire medical team fired and under investigation for gross negligence, Jun-ho was back in full control of Horizon Robotics. His stock soared, his reputation as a survivor made him a legend. But the massive mansion on the cliff felt emptier than ever. A week later, Maya had packed her few belongings into her old, battered suitcase. Her work was done. Jun-ho was safe, healthy, and back on his throne. She assumed she would go back to the agency, or maybe Jun-ho would give her a generous bonus and send her on her way. She was standing at the front gate of the estate, the ocean wind whipping her hair, waiting for a taxi to take her back to her small apartment in the city. A sleek black luxury car screeched to a halt on the driveway in front of her. Jun-ho jumped out, not dressed in a suit, but in casual clothes, looking breathless and frantic. "Where do you think you're going?" he demanded, striding towards her. "Back to my life," Maya said, gripping the handle of her suitcase tightly. "You're safe now, Jun-ho. The bad guy is caught. You don't need a night cleaner to watch over you anymore." "I don't need a cleaner," Jun-ho said, stepping closer, invading her personal space, ignoring the security guards who were watching from the gatehouse. He looked into her eyes, his own filled with an emotion she was afraid to name. I need a head of research for my new biotech division. I'm starting a new wing dedicated to toxicology and preventative medicine." Maya blinked, stunned. What, Jun-ho? I don't have my degree. You are the most brilliant chemist I know," he interrupted. "Your degree doesn't matter. Your results do. You saved my life when no one else could." He took another step, his voice softening, losing its commanding edge. "And I need my best friend, the person who knows me better than anyone, and maybe, if she's willing to take a chance on a man with a lot of baggage, I need the woman I'm falling in love with." Maya dropped her suitcase. It hit the pavement with a thud. She stared at him, her heart pounding. "You're a billionaire, Jun-ho, one of the most powerful men in the country. I'm a broke student from Chicago with a criminal record for working on an expired visa." "I fixed the visa this morning," Jun-ho said, a small, charming smile playing on his lips. "My lawyers are very good, and I don't care about the money or the status. You saw me when I was weak. You saw me when I was nothing but a dying man in a soiled bed, stripped of everything, and you treated me with dignity. You treated me like a human being. You fought for me when I couldn't fight for myself. That's all that matters to me." He held out his hand, the same hand she had held when he was seizing on the floor, the same hand she had healed with her care and her brilliance. "Stay," he whispered, his eyes pleading. "Please let me take care of you for a change." Maya looked at the mansion, a place that had been a prison of secrets, now basking in the sunlight. She looked at the man standing before her, offering her a world she never dreamed she could be a part of. She thought of her sister and how proud she would be. She smiled, tears of relief and happiness streaming down her face. She reached out and took his hand. It was warm and strong. Epilogue: 3 years later. The Seoul Convention Center was packed for the annual Science and Innovation Awards. Dr. Maya Williams Park walked onto the stage to thunderous applause to accept the Innovator of the Year award for her groundbreaking work in developing new, rapid detection methods for synthetic toxins. She wore a stunning emerald green gown, her hair styled in elegant locks. In the front row, holding a sleeping, curly-haired toddler in his arms, sat Park Jun-ho. He was looking up at his wife with a look of pure, unadulterated adoration and pride. Maya took the microphone, looking out at the sea of faces. "They say to never underestimate the person who cleans the room," she said, her voice strong and confident. "They say to never look past the people in the background. Because sometimes the person you don't see is the only one watching out for you. Sometimes the person holding the mop is the one holding the keys to the future." The applause was deafening. Jun-ho kissed the top of his daughter's head and smiled. They had both found their future in the most unexpected place. Sometimes love and salvation aren't found in a fairy tale castle, but in the darkest, messiest moments of our lives. If you loved this story of justice, betrayal, and romance, let us know in the comments.